Shalom, welcome to another episode of Inspiration from Zion. I'm Jonathan Feldstein, and I have the privilege of being your host, coming to you from the Judean Mountains here in Israel. I like to refer to it as the original Bible Belt. Inspiration from Zion is a program of the Genesis 123 Foundation, whose mission is to build bridges between Jews and Christians with Israel in ways that are new, unique, and meaningful. I pray that you will find this all of those. Through this program, we're excited to connect you to people and stories in and relating to Israel to give you a window to look through, experiencing aspects of life here that you might not otherwise know about. We want this to be interactive, so please be in touch with us at inspirationfromzion@gmail.com and send along any questions and any comments about any topic anytime. Or you can reach us at genesis123.co or follow and like Inspiration from Zion on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. As we record this, full disclosure, I am still recovering from jet lag for my recent 5-week trip, the longest I've ever been away from Israel since I moved here 22 years ago, which started out with an unbelievable divine appointment. I started out for a moment in Atlanta and then bumped to Washington, D.C. for a couple of conferences to engage Christians with some of our projects and other things, and just to network, and then moved on to Seattle and Nashville and Texas, and I don't even remember where else. But 5 long weeks, and I'm still recovering. But one of the highlights, truly, at the very beginning, was being in Washington, D.C. as a guest at the Faith and Freedom Convention in Washington. It was wonderful to be there. And because I typically, if you're following by video, you can see I'm wearing my kippah on my head. I typically do stand out as an Orthodox Jew. And if you're listening, then you can watch the video. And because of that, I get lots of wonderful comments from non-Jews, from Christians specifically, who just come and express their love for Israel and the Jewish people. And then I get to be a magnet for other Jewish people. And I was approaching Capitol Hill on a bus with my friend and partner Marzia Mirizadeh. We worked together on the program Root and Branch, which if you follow Inspiration from Zion, I know you know about. And we were approaching to begin the day of meetings on Capitol Hill, and this very nice man walked up to me and started talking to me in the first person as if he was Jewish, but it was kind of a fish out of water setting because I didn't expect to meet any other Jews at the Faith and Freedom Coalition. We ended up sitting together. We saved 4 seats because he had other friends arriving, and one of those friends is our guest today, Rabbi Yonatan Hamburger. We connected immediately. Jewish souls tend to do that. Plus, that his name is the same as mine. I just anglicize it, which my parents did. Jonathan is Yonatan, but my Hebrew name is Yonatan. And we connected also because of something so unique that he does. And we're going to tell that story today. And I want you to not just be involved and listen, but truly be part of what he's doing because we are so very committed to what we're doing, connecting with Christians, building bridges with Christians. In the case of Rabbi Hamburger, teaching Judaism and Torah to Christians, and in a way that's special because it's very personal, because he is. Let me read you the bio from the inside of his book, and we're going to talk with you about his book. It's called Echoes from Sinai. Rabbi Yonatan Hamburger is an Orthodox Hasidic teacher known for his warmth, I already said that, clarity, and gift for introducing Jewish wisdom to readers from many backgrounds. After a successful career in business, he devoted himself to full-time Torah study and teaching, sharing Jewish insights from classical and mystical Jewish sources with humility, humor, and a deep respect for every person's spiritual path. And I found that to be true in our subsequent interaction. He leads weekly Torah classes across the American South, where Christians, Jews, and seekers gather in a spirit of curiosity and friendship. And his widely read newspaper columns reach thousands of readers throughout the region. Echoes from Sinai, this book that I'm holding, which you need to get, is his first major book project, born out of years of teaching, dialogue, and shared exploration of Torah's timeless wisdom. Rabbi Hamburger, we've been talking about getting together since probably the evening of the day We met in the lobby of the Washington Hilton. I'm really glad this is the first podcast that I'm recording since coming home because it's absolutely been one of my priorities. Welcome to Inspiration from Zion.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Do me a favor, though. Please call me Jonathan.
I will call you Yonatan, but with kavod and respect of the position of being a rabbi. Okay, so it's hard for me, Yonatan. Um, I like there's so many things I like about the book, and we're going to talk about that. But it's also your story of how you came to publish this book, which you noted in your bio as your first, and that's interesting and it's surprising because it's not specifically for a Jewish audience. But when you talk about in the beginning of your bio that you're an Orthodox Hasidic teacher, not just Orthodox, I'm Orthodox, but you're Hasidic, and you come from the Chabad, the Lubavitch movement that's been around for the better part of 2 centuries. I shared with you the very first week that we met my minor connection to Chabad, how my bar mitzvah teacher was a Chabad man from Borough Park who would come to suburban New Jersey to teach me, and the tefillin that I wear are my grandfather's from Poland, and somehow he acquired Chabad tefillin, and there were many other connections. But can you explain for people who may know the name, know the phrase, but don't know what Chabad really is, to give an overview of what Chabad is and and the kind of Hasidic teacher we're speaking to?
Happy to do that. I'll do it briefly. To Chabad, first of all, the name Chabad is an acronym. The acronym is for 3 Hebrew words, Chachma, Binah, and Da'at. Each one of those words represents a different form of knowledge. Chachma is known as wisdom. It's that flash that you get when you get an idea, like the eureka moment, if you will. Binah is the type of knowledge where you take that abstraction and you bring it down and make it understandable. And then finally, Da'at is an internalization where you make it yours. So that's the acronym of the word. What does it mean in practice? It means that we are all about outreach. We are all about love. I know that sounds funny, perhaps, but the reality is that our Rebbe, our grand rabbi, if you will, sent us all out with marching orders, and those marching orders are specifically to make as we say in Hebrew, a dira betachtonim, a dwelling place for God in the lower regions. And this is about the lowest region that we have. It's called planet Earth. So we are here basically to spread love, to spread kindness and compassion, and to exhibit those things within our behavior. So the outside matches the inside, if you will. If you meet any one of us, we're sort of identifiable with the long beards. I don't have my hat next to me, I'm sorry, but the black fedora looks like it comes from The Godfather, like Vito Corleone would wear. The whole thing, the fringes on the sides, unmistakable. And we usually have a smile on our face. So that's how you know who we are. Because we don't make distinctions between people. We don't make distinctions between Jews. We don't make distinctions between the various denominations of Christianity. We say that labels are for suits, not for human beings. So we take everybody on their own terms, and all we try to do is inspire people, remind them that there is a God above, and he wants his children to play nicely with each other. So that's an unconventional description of what Chabad is. I can give you a more accurate historical one if you want, but let's start with that and see what
Well,
you want.
it's a great description, and because we met at the beginning of my trip, I sent you a couple of messages during the course of the trip saying how it was interesting, but not terribly surprising that not everywhere I went, but almost everywhere I went, I would bump into a Chabad rabbi in Bainbridge Island, Washington, on the coast, the Atlantic coast in New Jersey and Delaware. And these are people with whom I didn't have a relationship because we just are magnets, and it's a interesting thing for non-Jewish followers will understand that one of the hallmarks, if you will, of Chabad wherever it is located, and all around the world. And in fact, I was just speaking to my kids yesterday over Shabbat about where we want to go on vacation, and I mentioned Vietnam. Right, of all places, Chabad in Vietnam is apparently becoming the biggest Jewish tourist draw in the world right now, and it's because you Chabad have that non-judgmental love perspective. Everyone is equal. Everyone is an individual, and you're connecting with people where they're at. And I always experience that. It's also a great way to be able to travel the world and know that somehow you're going to be able to find kosher food, or you're going to be able to find a Shabbat prayer service together, or whatever other Jewish needs that we have. And Chabad is so embracing. I've commented, and I know it gets people's back up, but I comment in a way that's equally loving. I wish that here in Israel we had a Chabad political party, because we need that kind of Judaism. It's a different conversation, but we need that kind of Judaism um, infused in our politics, especially as we approach an election in October that's going to be one of the most divisive in recent memory. So a little bit, I also shared with you when we met the article that I had written about the previous Chabad Rebbe, the sixth.
The Friedlacher
Um,
Rebbe, yes.
right.
Joseph Yitzhak
And
Schneerson.
correct. And I don't know if I shared it with you. When I was given a copy of his book, the book about him rather, I didn't realize that I was reading about the previous Rebbe. I thought that I was reading about the last Rebbe. And I was so engaged. I so loved reading that book, because he's the one that I understood who really took Chabad to the around the world. That he began placing people like you from small communities in Russia, and then Latvia, Lithuania, and then Poland before he came to America. And what an amazing vision! I so much would have loved the opportunity to meet him.
Well, you can meet him. You can meet him by learning his works, by learning his discourses. Very easy to meet him.
Where are his works and discourses
On
uh,
Amazon. You can go right
on
to
Amazon?
Amazon and you can download, or I can send you anything you want to read that explains his Weltanschauung, how he views the world and what it is that we're responsible for as a result.
Good.
And
And
there are no civilians. We're all responsible for refining the world, for perfecting the world, for bringing the ultimate redemption of the world, and that's what we're all about.
I love that. I love that. I'm so grateful for you and for Chabad. When we met and exchanged numbers, I noticed that yours was a California phone number, and it puzzled me because I was meeting you in the context of with the other Jewish friends from Georgia, and you had explained that you had made a somewhat recent migration from the LA area to the Atlanta area. I want to talk about what you are doing now and why you're in Georgia and what you thought you were going to be doing in Georgia. But what were you doing when you were in Los Angeles before you had when you got your 310 area code?
So we were in LA for many years. We moved to Georgia 5 years ago, empty nesters. I'm in my 70th year right now. We moved 5 years ago from Los Angeles, California, in the heart of the Jewish neighborhood. And I was still engaged in some business at the time. I also taught some classes, and I also ran our shul. Shul is a familiar term for synagogue or temple. And this was a very religious neighborhood, almost exclusively Jewish. It was very hard to even find a Christian, or at least a practicing Christian, anywhere in California for that matter. Uh, and we decided, based on the fact that I was not getting any younger and that we had always dreamt of being out of the big city, that we would locate elsewhere. So we did a systematic search and went from community to community. And I found the things in Georgia that I had been looking for, or so I thought. I was looking for Jews who were not participating in Jewish life, who are assimilated within the local culture, spread out. And that's what I came to do, was to wake them up, to be a pest and wake each and every one of them up and remind them that he's Jewish. Little did I know I had one plan, and God seemed to have another plan, because he brought me to the buckle of the Bible Belt. I appreciate that you're in the Bible Belt. We call ourselves the buckle of the Bible Belt here in North Georgia mountains, and met a group of people that absolutely astounded me, which turned into an entire shlichut, an entire relationship of giving and providing and educating and teaching these people. I'll just say anecdotally that my first trip in northern Georgia, I stopped at a supermarket somewhere in the middle of Yehupitzville, which is, for those of you who don't know where Yehupitzville is, it's between nowhere and nothing, and stopped at a supermarket to use the facilities. And I see this big, giant guy coming towards me with a really silly, scary grin on his face, overalls, a scene from Deliverance, all right? And I'm thinking, oh, boy, what's going to happen here? I don't know. I just got here, God, what do you want from me? And he's coming at me full steam ahead. I cover my eye. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. I thought I was saying what you say before, God forbid you leave planet Earth. And he comes up to me and he says, "You're a Jew." And I said,
Could have
okay.
gone many directions.
Yeah, okay, I'm a Jew. Yeah, what about it? He says, "I never met a Jew before." I said, "Well, come on, that's ridiculous. I mean, I realize we're in a small town, but come on, there must be a Jew in town. There must be, who's your doctor? Who's your attorney? Like, you must have met a Jew, an accountant, somebody." He says, no. Yes, of course, I know Jews, but I never met, and he pauses and he thinks, and he says, "I never met a Jewy Jew before." He says, "Can I hug you?" And he gives me a hug, and that's it, takes a selfie with me. And that was the news. That made his day, that he got to touch a real Jew. Not that I think that other Jews are not real, but in his mind, this is what a Jew is supposed to look like. So that was my entrance into rural Georgia, if you will. And from that, it took me to, as we say in Hebrew, by hashgacha pratit, by personal divine providence. One thing led to another, and before I knew it, I was getting invitations to teach at community meetings, in the social halls of churches. Then I was asked by a Methodist university to teach a class in adult education. That class from 4 years ago, is actually probably close to 100 people a week now.
Wow.
Mostly Christian, which led to speaking engagements elsewhere. So I do a lot of teaching, military bases and prisons. And yes, I do teach Jewish people also. But the what I'm finding is that Christians, specifically evangelicals, but not exclusively, but at least in this area, almost exclusively evangelical of all denominations, have a thirst to know Torah, Jewish Bible, if you will, the Hebrew Bible, Torah. They want to know it from an authentic perspective. They want to know it. They want to know what Jesus was learning, in essence, and that's what they turn to me for. And am I going way over your question? Do you want me to keep
No,
going?
this is I'm because you and I have discussed how we're kind of kindred spirits with just slightly different approaches. I'm fascinated. I want to keep going.
So the kitzur, the bottom line is that Christians know the Old Testament. They know the Hebrew Bible. They know the Torah. You're not going to pull the wool over anybody's eyes, especially when it comes to the prophets. You better be on your game if you're going to be teaching this stuff to Christians, more so than with our own people. So, but what I want to say is, when the Christian, the famous stories in the Old Testament, whether we're talking about Adam and Eve or Noah or Abraham or Moses, whatever it is, Christians knew these stories as children. They learned these stories on their grandmother's laps. They taught their grandchildren on their laps. They know these stories. but they don't have access to a 3,000-year-old tradition that includes Torah that they're not familiar with, the Mishnah, the Talmud, the Midrash, the Zohar, Hasidic literature. This is all Torah, by the way. This is not just some extra stuff. This is all Torah. So when you start, or that is when I start going deep underneath the actual words of Scripture, it's literally a mind-blowing experience for Christians. And the reason that I know that it's effective and the reason that I know that it's appreciated is because the comments are almost identical. Every time I meet somebody, they tell me, after they've learned with me for a while, Rabbi Yonatan, you've made me a better Christian. And
Ah,
for me, that's the goal. Well, by the way, if you don't know, Judaism is not a religion that proselytizes. We are not looking for converts. We have enough problems. We don't need, we don't want, it's not our thing. We want the Christian to be a better Christian. That's all we
yeah.
want.
I love
So,
that people tell you that because I always say that it's my interaction with Christians that indeed makes me a better Jew.
uh, yeah, I see that also. I also appreciate that as well. It gives me an appreciation having to teach from the inside out forces me to stand outside looking in, and it's just gewaldic. It's mind blowing for me as well. It really is.
Gavaldic is mind blowing. I never heard a definition, but that works. I think
Whatever,
that's very nice.
whatever.
When you were in that, first of all, are you connected with that guy who was your angel in the grocery store in North Georgia still? Did you ever speak?
Not specifically or not to my knowledge, but I also write these newspaper columns, and I get tons of mail every single week. I go I go anywhere in rural Georgia where I write in the newspaper, and I have like a fan club. Every supermarket I go to, people are trying to hug me, kiss me. I had
Wow.
a Korean War veteran with a Korean War baseball cap on, and he had Parkinson's. He's shaking like this. It was right
Oh,
after October 7th, and he says, "Get me over there to Israel. I'm going to go fight for you. I'm going to kick their." I'm sorry, this is G-rated. I can't say what he said, but you get the
yeah,
picture. These are the kind of responses I get from all over.
yeah.
So, here, not to say that we don't have our share of detractors, but I have not found them in Georgia. Or once in a blue moon, you get a negative comment. But for the most part, it's nothing but appreciation.
So now, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Los Angeles.
In LA. Okay. So coming from Los Angeles, coming to Georgia already, even in suburban Atlanta, that's still already a bit of a cultural shift. But now you're going to rural Georgia. And I know rural Georgia well, or I used to, because when I lived there in the
Well, you went
80s,
to Emory, didn't you?
I went to Emory and I worked for the Israeli consulate. And when I was working at the consulate, I would travel all over. Matter of fact, my epiphany moment involved driving through North Georgia to get to a place called Cleveland, Tennessee, which was the first time I had ever been in a church in the late '80s. And the angel who drove me was a tall, thin black man named Bill Cherry. And I always like to say his name because somewhere I hope maybe he's still around, or at least his kids or grandchildren. Because he was an angel to me, and it sounds like that man in overalls also was was kind of that to you as well. What was what was the substance of the epiphany when you started to realize this? Because you surely didn't come to Georgia to have that kind of interaction.
Thank you for that question, Jonathan. It's probably the most important thing that I have to say. At Mount Sinai, 3,337 years ago, the Jewish people and God formed a covenant. Everybody knows about it. We have a very specific, particular covenant that is comprised of 613 mitzvot or commandments, which literally mean thousands of thou shalls and thou shall nots. It's a full-time job. It keeps us busy all day long, as Jonathan will attest. But there was a second mandate also given at Sinai to us, which is not so broadcast. And the second mandate, in the words of the prophet Isaiah, is to be an or legoim, is to be a light unto the nations. It is our job to be stewards, not owners, stewards of the moral truth and the moral clarity in the Torah and to share it with all humanity. That's our job. That's how we started out as a people. We know that during the First Temple era, during the time of King Solomon, people came from far and near, kingdoms came from far and near to gain wisdom from King Solomon, to gain wisdom from the Jewish people. After the dispersion of the Second Temple in 70 of the Common Era, we ended up scattering all over the world, predominantly in Europe, in Christian Europe, and in Muslim North Africa and Arabian Peninsula, for the most part, as well as the Persian Empire. For various reasons, over the last 2,000 years, we were not in a position to share anything. It's just the reality. And now, thanks to evangelism, thanks to Nostra Aetate, the Second Vatican Council, thanks to an overall appreciation by Christians of Jews. Even amongst these supersessionalists, there's a tacit acceptance, and there's a tacit appreciation of who we are. So Christianity in general, but evangelism specifically, is hungry to hear more, which basically was our mandate that we were not able to fulfill. I don't mean this in any disrespectful way, but we spent 2,000 years running away from Christians. It's very hard to share anything under those circumstances, but that's been certainly compensated for over the last 100 years. So with that being said, we must now do what the original mandate was. And most of us don't know how to do it because we're still cloistered. We're still insulated. We don't know how to deal with Christians. Maybe it was my upbringing. I don't know what it was specifically about me. And I don't mean to suggest that I'm the only one doing this in the United States. But the fact is that we have so much in common and we have so much to share. Theological differences notwithstanding, we can talk about all the theological differences. Okay, whatever. I'll just share anecdotally. The founder of Chabad Hasidut, the founder of the Chabad movement in the late 1700s, his name was Shneur Zalman of Liadi, affectionately we call him the Alter Rebbe, the old rabbi. He was about to get into a carriage in the Ukraine and ride through the forest to another town. It was a very dangerous proposition. You had bandits, you had wild animals. It was not the safest thing to do, but he had to make this trip. He gets on the carriage. The Ukrainian Catholic driver, did not genuflex before he hit the horse. Alter Rebbe noticed that he jumped off the wagon. Oh. When his attendant asked him, why did you jump off the wagon? He said, because it's dangerous. And if this man doesn't believe in God, I am not going with him through the forest. Wow. So I bring this up just as a story. But the fact is that the greatest philosopher in Jewish history, Maimonides, we call the Rambam, is very specific about the fact that Christianity has done so much good in this world and that we have to appreciate Christians as they are. So that's my positioning. That's where I'm at, is to not try to replace anything that the Christian believes. I don't mean to suggest when I say that I can offer depth and understanding in these passages that the Christian is not aware of. The Christian is drinking from the same river. It's just that we have access to the source, to the wellspring, if you will. And that's what it is that I try to share, not to change anything, but as I said, to make all of us better.
So, but there's nothing that you just said that if we were having this conversation academically 10 years ago, that you wouldn't have known or wouldn't have said. But it's the difference, I think, between the theoretical and the applied. And now you're in the applied aspect. So I'm curious what in the last 5 years have been the kind of epiphanies that have given meat to the bones of what you just said that you realize as a Hasidic Jew?
Well, there's certainly a side benefit to teaching what I teach, and that is that there's also without even realizing it, there's a public relations aspect to it.
Yeah.
Most Christians in rural environments have never really had access to Jewish people,
Nope.
except for stereotypical Jewish people or what they see in the news or in entertainment. Or what is a Jew? That's a different conversation, or we can touch on that today if you want to. But from a Torah perspective, from a Torah authentic perspective, from a group of people who, just like you, we are part of an unbroken link, an unbroken chain. We are links in an unbroken chain that stretches all the way back to Sinai. The Christian is fascinated by our memory, by our historical memory, and it's very enticing for them, and as a result, it's very enticing for me. So the fact that I'm appreciated, and the fact that people say that I'm their second favorite Jew is it's music to my ears.
Yes.
Uh, so I don't know how to answer your question more specifically. I just know that number one, this was important from Sinai. Number two, I'll tell you that our Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Menachem Mendel Schneerson, a blessed memory, who was really responsible for invigorating all of us to go
Yes.
out into the four corners of the earth and spread the well springs of Judaism in
Yep.
a humanistic way. He told us specifically that we have to reach out beyond our own borders, Jewish borders. And he told us what to do. He told us how to do it. That was 40 years ago. And for the last 40 years, we've been stumbling around trying to figure it out. And we haven't always been successful at it. Those of us that have tried have done it somewhat in a perhaps an offensive way, perhaps a condescending way, perhaps a patronizing way. I'm not sure, but I feel that I'm on the same wavelength, and um, as a result, I'm able to connect,
Yeah.
kishka to kishka, soul to soul,
Yeah.
stomach to stomach, guts to guts, and
Well,
that seems to be what's working.
you have over and above the nature of Chabad, you have that Ophi, that personal orientation of just being a kind person, and that's evident from, not that we've known each other a long time, but it was evident from the first moment, uh, literally the first moment, and every interaction since then. But it is an acquired thing because, as you said, for most of 2,000 years, we've built up barriers, or we've been put behind barriers, and we've built up our own barriers because of how we've been treated throughout the diaspora. And unfortunately, a lot of that was at the hands of Christians, people who professed to be Christians, but who a lot of our Christian friends today would say, no, they really weren't Christians if they didn't love you as Jews, and that's shocking in and of itself for Christians to find. But yes, I always say that my business is building bridges. Sometimes in order to build bridges, you also have to break down barriers. And there are a lot of them. And it's not a process, it's an overnight thing by any stretch.
I want to just comment on that. I don't see myself as a bridge builder, so to speak. I don't see, I mean, Christians know about messianic rabbis. Christians know about interfaith rabbis. Christians know about Hebrew roots rabbis.
Yes.
I'm none of those things. I am just somebody secure in my own Judaism, standing with inside Torah Judaism, sharing as an emissary to anybody who wants to hear what's inside. And that's what I am, unapologetically. So as far as the concept of kindness is concerned, to be a chassid, to be a Jew, means to develop one's kindness, to develop one's chesed, to develop one's tiferet. These are Hebrew Kabbalistic terms. Let me just say what I mean. Our Rebbeim, our rabbis, are very clear that the state of the world is the state of the world because of baseless hatred. This is what destroyed our temple. This is what destroyed many great civilizations. This is what's eating us from the inside today, is baseless hatred. The antidote, from our perspective, is to practice baseless love.
Yes.
And that's the countermeasure That's the anti-venom.
The inoculation.
Thank you. That's what we are. That's what we are about. And we don't just do that with the people that agree with us. We do that with the people on the opposite side.
Yeah.
We are here to share love, period. And that seems to be the elixir that really is what's creating change in this world. We use the metaphor of light, darkness and light a lot. I think probably in Christianity you do as well. Darkness and light. We say that you can't hit darkness with a stick. It doesn't work. You can hit it, but it's not going to do anything. But if you go over to the wall and flip on a switch or you light a match, it dispels an awful lot of darkness.
Right.
So we don't get down into the gutter and roll around in the dirt with people at all. We step over that and we show them light. And
Yeah.
that's what lifts everybody up. And that's what we try to do.
I'm glad you
So,
mentioned that. Yeah. You had mentioned earlier that our mandate as the Jewish people is to be a light unto the nations, and for a couple of thousand years it wasn't really that easy to do so. One of the reasons we took the name Genesis 1, 2, 3 Foundation is from Genesis 12:3. I don't think I've shared this with you, but the name intuitively comes from the verse in Genesis 12:3. I will bless those who bless you. I will curse those who curse you. We want to make, and you're also old enough to remember the Jackson Five, blessing Israel as easy as 1, 2, 3, ABC 1, 2, 3, like the Jackson Five. But the other piece, and many people don't know the answer when I speak among Christians, because we only know the first two-thirds of the verse, is what? How does that verse conclude? I will, the families of the world will be blessed through you. So we took the name Genesis 12:3 because I believe that yes, people should bless Israel, meaning the state and the Jewish people. But we, as the Jewish people, have that mandate as well to be a blessing to them. And I incorporate that. Matter of fact, there's a there's a chunk of money sitting at the Chabad in um Dar el Salaam, Tanzania, that I sent there to be a blessing to one of the families of one of the hostages taken and killed on October 7th, who was a Tanzanian agricultural student. And right now, my money is parked at the Chabad in Tanzania in order for us to figure out how we're going to help this Christian family, because I want to embody that being a blessing to the families of the world.
wow, Jonathan, that's extraordinary. I don't know that I shared this with you, but when I met you and I spoke to you for only a few minutes,
Yeah.
I had such a relief when I realized what you were all about, because I was walking around feeling like I was the crazy one. To see what I'm seeing and to do what I'm doing, because my co-religionists, quite frankly, look at me like I maybe something's wrong here. And I met you, and I guess you got that something wrong with you too, or I don't know, you figure it out. But the work that you're doing, it really gives me goosebumps. When I looked on the internet, when I heard what you had to say, when I saw the different projects you're involved with, and I saw the way that you engage, I knew that I found a kindred spirit, and I bless you for that. I thank you for
We
that.
I feel the same, and I made a comment that I don't know what it is, but we're kindred spirits, and we're doing, I think you complimented whatever it was I said. We are doing the same work, but we're doing it just from slightly different perspectives, and I love that. You actually just touched upon something that I wanted to get into before talking about your book. I don't want to neglect that, and I do want people to get it. Um, it's an interesting world in which you live, and our co-religionists, other Jews. I sometimes joke that when I talk about what I do to most of my what I do with most of my Jewish friends, they raise all three of their eyebrows in puzzlement, and because they don't understand, because it's somehow over 2000 years inbred that we need to be separate from Christians and Gentiles, and building bridges. Why? And don't they all have this agenda, and fill in the blank, X, Y, and Z? When you're at home or sharing with friends and other Chabad rabbis around the US or around the world and talking about what you're doing, how is that received?
Uh, I can't tell you that I get enthusiastic support, but at the same time, there's an appreciation of the mission itself, and there's an appreciation that our Rebbe, our taskmaster, gave us this specific mission, and that I've got the bit between my teeth, and I'm pushing it forward. So yes, there is an appreciation, um, and there's also a question that people have, which is, what is it that you share about the Torah? And my response is, I share everything. You share everything? Well, yeah,
Why
God
not?
said share everything. I don't necessarily, I was going to say, I don't necessarily bore people with things that don't apply to their specific lives. They don't need to necessarily know all the intricate aspects of kashrut, of kosher, of taharat mishpacha, of family purity, of how we celebrate Pesach. And then I realized the questions I'm getting from Christians are fascinated with kosher. I don't know why. If I didn't have to eat kosher, I would go to McDonald's or something. I don't know. But no, Christians are like fascinated with kosher. They're fascinated with family purity. They're fascinated with Passover. So nothing is out of bounds. There's nothing that one should not teach.
Right, nor should it be, of course, because you said it before. It's the same Torah. It's the same. They call it the Old Testament, or the Hebrew Bible. Except for the fact that we have the the authentic version. It's not a translation, and that's also important when we're working with Christians because there's so many translations that even in the best of scenarios you're not going to get the same level of depth. But unfortunately, we know that many translations are replete with mistakes and deliberate editorial bias. So it's fascinating just to pick on any one word that is commonly used in an English or a Christian Bible. And when you talk about the actual Hebrew word and what it means and the depth of that, and you were then discussing the oral Torah being the same, which Christians also don't understand. I've had so many people say, well, if it's not written, then how is it the Torah? If it's not printed, if it didn't come from God at Sinai, and that's a whole deeper conversation in terms of what we believe actually happened uh, 3,337 years ago. Is that right?
Correct. But to be clear, the what we call the oral Torah was also given by God to
Correct.
Moses at Mount Sinai, along with very strict instructions in terms of how future generations can and cannot interpret, guardrails on the whole subject. So we look at the five books of Moses, if you will, as the quick start guide, and then that big fat instruction manual that nobody reads. That's the oral Torah, and that explains everything because you can't have one without the other. The
Right.
five books of Moses say an eye for an eye, but how many people, how many Jews besides Sammy Davis Jr. do you see walking around
Moshe
with
Dayan.
that? Exactly. The point is that an eye for an eye literally has to do with financial remuneration for damage, for physical damage. That's all it is. We wouldn't know that if we didn't have an oral Torah.
Right. But which is a great insight, and that's true. But that's something, even if one wants to interpret literally an eye for an eye, fine. Then someone can go that way. But when I talk about it with Christian friends, I'll pick any random verse in Leviticus, and I'll say, well, I'll ask you, what does it mean? And most of the time, people are stumped because it doesn't really mean very much in a modern application without the rabbinic insight that yes was also given at Sinai, and that's why I'm so glad we're having this conversation and you just brought to the case about why it's inseparable.
B'diukach. Exactly.
Okay, so let's jump now that we're talking Torah, let's jump into your book. And when you and I met, we met in a conference room in one of the house office buildings, and then bumped into one another again that evening when in the lobby of the hotel when you gave me the copy of my book. For those, I'm using the screen, Echoes from Sinai, Rabbi Yonatan Hamburger, and we'll talk about where one can get that as well. But when you gave me a book, you explained it to me in a way that made my jaw drop because it's so insightful about how you've written this your first book. Can you explain the DNA behind it?
I think what you're referring to is as follows. There are, I realize that Christians are used to chapters and verses. Jews don't use chapters and verses, or now in modern translations, I suppose there are. But nonetheless, the Torah itself, if you open up the scroll, you're not going to see chapters and verses.
Correct.
So we separate into what are called parshiot, into portions. There's 54, which we read over the course of a 52-week solar year. So there's some double portions. I took all 54 of the portions and I took out one verse, only one verse from however many chapters in that section, just one teensy, teensy little verse, and wrote a 400-page book from each one of those verses. So a 400-page book, excuse me. So I took a verse that's seemingly like the book of Leviticus, as an example, that seemingly doesn't have a lot of value or a lot of applicability today. And I wrote about that verse in two ways. I wrote it as a Jew in the style of what's called a Devar Torah, an analytical analysis of what the verse means. And side by side on the opposite page, I wrote a devotional from I won't say from a Christian perspective, but I didn't know about this genre called devotionals until I started researching and saw that this is very, very common in Christian writing, and I fell in love with the style. So I wrote side by side with the analysis, I wrote this emotional,
Yeah.
deep sort of feeling oriented with an insight, with a parable, with a meditation for each one of these chapters. So for an example, I'll say that. I don't want to take you off where you're going. So
No, I'll go give an example, and then I'm going to come back to some other things.
yeah, the book of Leviticus, for most people, not just Christians, for Jews also, it's like, I can't wait till we get through this book so we can get back to the fun, we get through the fun stories again, you know? So I'll just like choose just one example. When we're building the Mishkan, the tabernacle, it says that we had to build what's called a kior. A kior is a wash basin that the priestly class, the Kohanim, would use to wash their hands and feet before they would enter the holy tabernacle. All right, great. Why do we need to know this? What's important about it? Tells us that this was made from mirrors. Mirrors. Okay, why do we need to know that? If you go deeper, you find out that these mirrors were actually vanity mirrors that had been used by the women in Egypt under Pharaoh's oppressive regime after he said, well, you have to annihilate all the firstborn boys. The men decided they didn't want to have intimate engagement with their wives anymore because they didn't want to sentence whatever they produced to death. So they wouldn't engage. The women took their vanity mirrors and made themselves beautiful and seduced their husbands in the field to have relations. Hence, the Jewish people survived.
Yeah.
These were the very mirrors used when Moses found out that these mirrors had been used for such a mundane, at the very least, maybe even profane purpose. He was aghast. He didn't want to use the mirrors to build this wash basin. God says in a bas kol, in a voice from heaven, he says, Moses, these are more dear to me than anything else you could possibly make this wash basin from. So what's the lesson? What's the lesson from what I just said? The lesson is our job, all of us, is to take the mundane and turn it into something holy.
Beautiful.
Yes, we know what's holy. Yes, we know what's prohibited. But 80% of life is that in between. It's called permitted. It's called mundane. Our job, your job, my job, everybody's job, Jew, Christian, Muslim, is to take everything that's permitted and find a way to turn it into something holy.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Is that your? I didn't get into Leviticus, but is that your sentence, your verse that you picked, or
I
you're
don't
just using
remember.
it?
I don't remember.
Okay,
It
you don't
sounded
know,
probably, yeah, probably,
but
yeah.
it's beautiful. so this is initially I thought, and I couldn't wait. You gave me this book the end of June. It wasn't until the middle or end of July that I actually started to be able to get into it. And I thought, my goodness, that's going to be my book, and I'm going to read it until I finish it because I was excited to meet you and what you're doing and your insight. And then I jumped in. I think I started reading at the beginning of Genesis, and then I said, okay, that's not really where I should be going. So I went to Deuteronomy, which we had just begun, and I was so excited, but then I started getting ahead of myself. And I realized because we have that weekly cycle, and I said, no, 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 that's actually not the right way to read this book. Because as a devotional, in the Christian style, if you will, it's actually meant to be a reading of a day, a reading of a week. And so
Exactly.
this is perfect for that. But my question, as I was jumping in first in Genesis and then I think it was in that sequence or vice versa, and then Deuteronomy, and I'm up to date, um, was how did you pick that one verse from all of the Torah? Because before we even began recording, I mentioned based on what you've done, you've got another two bookshelves of the books behind you that you can make more volumes because you've got so many more verses. How did you narrow down just that one?
Uh, I see my job as providing moral clarity. And every portion that I choose emphasizes some basic concepts: kindness, compassion, fidelity, trustworthiness, all the basics, because that really is the basis of the Torah. So each verse that I chose is to emphasize that particular lesson.
W- did you have difficulty in some of the Torah portions debating between this one or that one or 10 or 20? Was that a hard decision for you?
Well, that's my part two and part three and
Okay,
part
good, good.
27, like a Rocky movie. Um, but but I will say this in all disclosure that these chapters are a result of things that I've been writing. I write a weekly column in mostly Christian areas all over Georgia and parts of Tennessee and North Carolina. And every week it's on whatever the parsha, whatever the portion of Torah is. So I've been doing this for 4 or 5 years.
Got
So
it.
I've got a collection of things that I've already written to choose from. But then I had to convert it to a style, like a devotional style, if you will. And you've only got 300 or 400 words in a newspaper, and here I have the luxury of expounding much more.
Indeed. So we could go on all day, but I don't want to because I want people to get the book and read it themselves. So I don't forget where where can people connect with you to get your book? Where is it available? Tell us that right away, and then we're gonna hopefully, if I'll have the presence of mind, I'll come back to that at the end as well.
The book is called Echoes from Sinai. You can find that on Amazon. Just type in Echoes from Sinai. You can also go to my website, which is called tasteoftorah.org. And there you'll find a whole bunch of information. You don't need to buy the book. I mean, obviously, it's good for me if you buy the book, but it'll also be very good for you to buy the book.
Yeah.
But there's a whole bunch of free stuff on my website. There's one booklet example, for example, on my website that's called A Pathway to Moral Clarity, which is the summary of all the things in the Torah that are supposed to be shared with all humanity. You can download that for free. Anyway, the website is tasteoftorah.org. I also, everything that I write for the newspaper, you can download for free from Substack. You can watch all my Torah snippets and my long play classes on YouTube. So I am accessible.
Great. Okay. We'll put all of that information in the show notes. I wanted to pick one Torah portion because it's one of my favorites, and it's a thread that connects us as well. I mentioned earlier in our conversation that the man who taught me for my bar mitzvah was a Chabad rabbi from Brooklyn who came to suburban New Jersey. His name was Bernard Hallen, and I can still picture him kind and engaging, and he taught me a lot of things I didn't know, and unfortunately many things that I've forgotten since. It's been a while. But the Torah portion for my bar mitzvah, however many years ago it was Parshat Bo, which is Exodus chapter 10, verse 23. Oh, well, that's actually the verse that you picked. No one could see anything else or move about for 3 days, yet all the Israelites had light in the places where they lived. Again, we're coming back to that light metaphor that we've now discussed a couple of times organically, and I wasn't even preparing this on purpose. Um, I love what you wrote here. I also, it's another connection that I have when I first was asked to read the book on the previous Rebbe. I I assumed incorrectly that it was the seventh Rebbe, not the previous, not his father-in-law. And I was told, oh, he was so involved with Soviet Jewry, because that was my thing growing up as an adolescent and into college at Emory, in fact. And this for me, it connected with me in 1980. When was my bar mitzvah? Two? 83? A while ago. Or no, excuse me, 1978. 1978, even before that, because this is the Torah portion of the final plagues and when the Jewish people go free. So I'm not going to talk about what's in the book necessarily, although I did read the verse that you highlighted. I would love if you would do a teaching relating to something from the Torah portion of my bar mitzvah. Putting you on the spot, I know.
What did I write about? I wrote about the ninth plague. I wrote about
No,
the Hoshek.
yes, no one could see anything else or move about for 3 days, yet all the Israelites had light in the places where they lived. The chapter is called Light in the Darkness, Illuminating Connection.
So overall, as everybody knows, there were 10 plagues. Each one, the volume got turned up and became more severe. Each one, we read that God hardened Pharaoh's heart, which sounds like it's not fair. In other words, Pharaoh was not predisposed to letting the children of Israel go. And when he refused, God said, okay, let's make it even harder for him to say yes. And successively, he keeps making it harder and harder for Pharaoh to agree.
Wow.
Which brings up the larger question, where is the free choice? Do we have free choice or do we not have free choice? And how does free choice and reward and punishment fit in together? Free choice, we know. We see free choice in the very first portion of the Torah. We see it obviously in the Garden of Eden. This is where free choice is born. Adam and Eve have the opportunity to resist the temptation of eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. If there was not that free choice, nothing could exist. If all we could do was choose good, good would have no value. Going back to Parshat Bo, going back to the Jews as slaves in Egypt, Pharaoh is digging his heels in successively with each plague. It isn't literally that God hardened his heart, but with every bad habit, with every time Pharaoh said no, he felt compelled to dig his heels in that much deeper. It became that much harder for him to say yes. If he had said yes, obviously it would have been a whole different story, but it couldn't be. So how does this all interact? How do we see that Pharaoh apparently has freedom of choice, and at the same time, God already knows the outcome? How do we reconcile that? Well, if I have a time machine, Jonathan, and I go to tomorrow lunch and I know that you're going to have a tuna sandwich for lunch, that doesn't mean you're compelled to have a tuna sandwich for lunch tomorrow. You can have whatever you want. The fact that God knows past, present, and future does not change the reality of your ability to make a decision. He's not actively doing anything. Our present is his past. Our future is his past, his present, etc. Specifically, I want to say of the ninth plague, there were two aspects to the ninth plague. The first was that people could not see. They couldn't see each other. They couldn't see their hands if they put them in front of them. And then the darkness got intensified. It
Yeah.
became so intense that people couldn't move. Many people don't know this, but one of the reasons for this plague of total darkness is because the majority of Jews never got out of Egypt. And
Very
God
good.
let them die, caused them to die during this plague, and he didn't want to see the Egyptians watching him kill Jewish people. What was their sin? Was it idol worship? No. Was it depravity? No. Not to say that there weren't Jews doing things they shouldn't be doing. It was none of those reasons. It was the fact when given the opportunity to leave Egypt, they said, no, we got accustomed to it. We're used to it. We don't need to leave here. We can make it work here. Here we have watermelons and cucumbers and leeks and fish. Why leave this servitude? Why leave this slavery? And at that point, God said, the Jewish people, these people are not redeemable. Now, that will not be the case with our final Exodus, with the coming of Mashiach. Theological, for the Christian audience, theological differences notwithstanding. Everybody will come out. Everybody will come out, whether we want to or not. We will all see the reality, and we'll all want to be out. I have one more point, and I forgot the point, which is not unusual for me, by the way.
But it's
Uh,
okay. I put you on the spot, and I'm impressed with all of the points you've done so far.
okay, okay. Uh, Let me just go back
Please.
I brought up Genesis, and it was in my mind as I'm talking about Bo. As we talk about Bereshit, the first portion of the Bible, the Garden of Eden, to give you an example of what Christians often miss, it's not their fault, but if they don't know the Hebrew, the name of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, the name of the tree is the Etz HaDa'at, which is translated as the tree of knowledge. The knowledge is not information. It's not an informational knowledge. It's an intimate knowledge. It's an internalized knowledge. When they ate from the fruit, it isn't as though they acquired a knowledge and that's what messed everything up. They already had the knowledge. They had knowledge of everything. They were elegant, sophisticated human beings. They named all the animals. They knew everything that was going on. So it isn't that they learned something that they didn't know. Here's what happened at the Garden of Eden. Da'at, the internalization of knowledge, prior to eating from the fruit, and I'm sorry to disappoint you guys, but it wasn't an apple, but Jonathan can tell you about that in another episode. Before they ate from the fruit, there was evil. Evil existed. It existed externally. It was in the corner of the garden. Adam and Eve looked at the evil in the corner and they said, "Phew, I don't want this stuff. It's evil. Who wants it?" But as soon as they ate it, the evil became internalized into us. And that's what we've been dealing with ever since. Ever since that moment, we're dealing with internalized knowledge, internalized evil. How can something that tastes so good be so bad for you? That's kind of the question that we're all asking all the time. Now, I'll just say one last thing because I probably way over time,
Please.
right?
I started this is the Energizer Bunny of Chabad teaching. I like it. Go. No, it's actually not. I know that.
Okay, here's my last point.
Go ahead.
Good and evil are internalized in all of us. That means that nothing is 100% good. It has a little bit of schmutz,
Oh,
a little bit of dirt in it. And something, no matter how bad it is, has an element of good in it. And that's what makes the world so confusing for all of us. That's the problem. Now, our prophets tell us that for the Messiah to come, for Moshiach to come, good and evil need to separate the way they were in their pristine state in the Garden of Eden before the sin. And that, my dear friends, is exactly what we see happening right now. Good and evil are becoming completely polarized. We're freaked out. We're pulling our hair out saying, "Ay, ay, ay, the sky is falling like Chicken Little." No, 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 no. This is all
That's a good
prophecy.
point.
This is all beautiful. This is the darkest point of night before dawn. Evil and good are separating. And we can't help but notice that the one issue, the lightning rod, if you will, that, and it's all about is little old us, is the Jews, is Israel. That seems to be the point. How else could the far, far right and the far, far left connect on anything? There's nothing they have in common except a hatred of the Jewish people.
Yes,
Explain that one
yes.
to me. I'll close with this. I'm sorry.
Go
I can't
ahead.
help. Okay, this is it. I promise this is it. In Yiddish, the term for a spiral staircase is
Yeah.
a schwindel trip. A translate schwindel as swindle. It's a swindling staircase. Why is a spiral staircase called a swindling staircase? Because as you go up and up and up, you're completely disoriented. You don't know what's front, you don't know what's back, you don't know what's above you until you get one step from the top. And when you get one step from the top, you're facing a wall. You're facing the opposite way of your destination. That's where we are right now. We are one step from the top. We are one step from our Geula. We are one step from our redemption. All we have to do is turn, and it's there.
I love this.
Okay, I'm done talking
No, first of all, you have a new chassid in me, a new
now.
follower, and I see why having this conversation, why you have organically built up such a beautiful following among our Christian friends in Georgia. I think it's
Thank you,
beautiful.
Jonathan.
I just want, we've covered a lot and we can do this on a regular basis. And I look forward to other opportunities, but I always like to give my guests the last word. What have we missed? What's one more important message or something that we haven't discussed today that you really want people to know as we sit a few weeks from the Yamim Noraim, the high holidays, on the biblical calendar or in general.
Okay, this is very important, guys. When you go check out at the market, at the grocery store, and you see the cashier has a certain dullness in her eyes, maybe a little frown on her face, why don't you ask her what's up? When you see a guy strung out in the front of a Starbucks, rather than give him $10 that's going to go into his arm, rather than ignore him like he doesn't exist, what about saying, "Hey, buddy, can I buy you a cup of coffee?" When your neighbor who just had hip surgery is immobile and it's the night before trash pickup day, why not walk up the hill and take down the trash cans for him?
Yes,
Why not have your wife bake an extra pie for him? That's how we bring our redemption. Goodness and kindness in everyday life.
I love that. Thank you. Rabbi Yonatan Hamburger, I'm using the title because we're finishing, but familiarly, Yonatan. Thank you for everyone who's joining and following. You'll follow Rabbi Yonatan Hamburger at tasteoftorah.org, and his book, Echoes from Sinai, is available at his website and also on Amazon. And I really want to encourage you to get it. I hope if you like it half as much as I do, then already it's very worth the value. So we don't forget. Well, let me begin the wrap up by just a couple of acknowledgments. And the announcement first. Before we started the conversation, Rabbi Hamburger graciously agreed, Yonatan graciously agreed. He's going to offer 5 books for free to five people we're going to pick at random who send an email and just say that they're interested. You can use Echoes from Sinai as the subject. We'll pick 5 people at random, and that's going to be his gift. So we can continue this kind of teaching in your own home, and then you can do so as well. I also always have to end our conversations thanking our sponsors, the sponsors of Inspiration from Zion. 2 dear friends. One is Priscilla Flory, who's known in my home as my bonus mother. a Christian woman who supported our work from its very inception. And since my mother died and my mother-in-law died 6 weeks apart 20 years ago, she's been the closest that we've had in our family to a living mother, and we're grateful for that relationship. And also special thanks to the Coyne family as well for their meaningful sponsorship. Inspiration from Zion and all of the Genesis 123 Foundation programs are made possible by donations, so please consider joining us to help continue the dialogue and build bridges. And in honor of Rabbi Hamburger here today and everyone who's become his follower throughout rural Georgia, I like to dedicate this episode in you, and that you can continue connecting with him and how he can shine the light, that we've used that metaphor so many times in this conversation, of Torah in your life and in your lives as well. If you'd like to sponsor a future episode in honor or memory of a loved one or special occasion, please be in touch at inspirationfromzion@gmail.com. And we'd always love to hear your comments, especially as part of a dialogue and conversation specifically like this, for our Ask the Rabbi program. So please be in touch with your questions and comments as well. Please do share this with others who will also find it of interest, and continue to join us right here as we bring you more meaningful conversations about unique topics relating to Israel that you won't hear anywhere else. Wherever you are in the world, I pray that you and your loved ones are safe and healthy, and I send my blessings from right here in the Judean mountains. God bless you.
Amen. Amen.